Welcome to the Knock On Effect podcast, where concussion meets conversation, with Adam Wood and Cliff Butler. Brought to you by Safeguarding You and the Melbourne Headache and Concussion Group. Let's get into this. All right, boys and girls, mums and dads, welcome back to the Knock On Effect, the podcast where concussion meets conversation. And I think it's fair to say that right now, that conversation is changing. Over the past few months, Australians have been confronted with some pretty uncomfortable questions about sport, concussion, repetitive head impacts, and what happens to the brain long after the cheering stops. The recent Four Corners investigation, Collision, revealed that 33 Australian rules footballers have now been diagnosed with CTE after their deaths, including players who died in their 20s, 30s and 40s. And importantly, this conversation is no longer confined to footy. It is becoming a conversation for all sport, which brings us to today's guests. If you followed Australian football through the late 80s and 90s, Paul Wade needs very little introduction. But for those who didn't live through that era, it's probably worth understanding just who we're talking to. Paul Wade isn't simply a Socceroo. He was the captain of the Socceroos. He represented Australia more than 100 times, including 84 full internationals, playing at the Seoul Olympics, fought through 2 World Cup qualifying campaigns, and captained his country from 1990 through to 1996. And this was a very different era of Australian football. This was before Australia became a regular fixture at World Cups, before the A-League, before qualification meant navigating Asia. These were the years when Australian football was fighting for recognition on the world stage. And the World Cup qualification could come down to surviving some of the most brutal pathways imaginable. And perhaps no moment captures that better than in 1993. Australia was drawn against Argentina for a place in the 94 World Cup. Not just Argentina, Diego Maradona's Argentina. And the man given the job of following arguably the greatest footballer who had ever lived around the field, Paul Wade. Australia drew 1-1 in Sydney and then went to Buenos Aires, where Argentina could manage only a 1-0 victory. Australia missed the World Cup, but that team and its captain had gone toe-to-toe with one of the giants of world football. Paul would eventually retire, having played 345 games in Australia's National Soccer League, becoming an Australian Football Hall of Fame inductee and receiving the Medal of Order for Australia for his contribution to football and the community. And football didn't finish for Paul when he stopped playing. For decades afterwards, his voice became his livelihood. Coaching, television, commentary, clinics, corporate speaking, leadership programs, working with kids and communities. He built a career around communicating, remembering stories, connecting with people, and sharing the lessons he'd accumulated through an extraordinary life in sport. And that is partly what makes the next chapter of Paul's story so confronting. Because today, Paul Wade is living with the diagnosis of probable chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or, as I've got butchered the word, CTE, a condition associated with repeated impacts to the brain. Paul has spoken publicly about his memory fading, about changes in his mood, about losing his train of thought, and about the reality that some of the things he once did almost instinctively, like preparing and delivering a speaking engagement, can now be incredibly difficult. And sitting alongside Paul today is someone who gives us another incredibly important perspective on that story, his wife, Val. Because while it is Paul that is living with neurological symptoms, those symptoms don't exist in isolation. They come home. They affect relationships, work, routines, families, and friendships. And Val has been alongside Paul through those changes. She has seen things that Paul himself may not always have been able to see, and increasingly has helped him navigate both his professional life and the new chapter of advocacy. So today, we don't just want to talk about what happened to Paul Wade's brain. We want to understand what happened to Paul Wade's life, what repetitive head impacts may have taken on him, what they have taken from him, what his journey has looked like from Val's side, and perhaps most importantly, what Paul wants the sporting world to learn from his experience. Because there's something I think we all need to take clearly from the outset. Paul Wade isn't anti-football. Far from it. Football gave him an extraordinary life. And his message isn't that kids shouldn't play sport. His message is that if we know more today than we knew when he was playing, then he may have a responsibility to do better with what we know. Paul and Val, welcome to the Knock On Effect podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'll leave now. I think you told the whole story. That was amazing. I'll be back.
That was good, Ads. That's your best, mate. I tell you what, you turned blue, but that was amazing.
Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Done.
Thank you.
It's good to be here, isn't it?
Yeah, great.
And guys, look, before we get into your story, Paul, I think we need to establish something that's really important, because we use 2 terms regularly on this podcast, which are related, but they're not interchangeable: concussion and CTE. And following the Four Corners and everything we've seen emerged over the past couple of months, There are probably a lot more people hearing the term CTE who really don't understand what that means. So, Cliff, over to you, mate. Let's start here. For somebody listening to this conversation for the first time, what actually is CTE? How is it different from concussion? And perhaps most importantly for the conversation we're about to have with Paul and Val is what are we learning about the relationship between repetitive head impacts, concussion, and what can happen to the brain decades later?
So it's my turn now because that was unbelievable. And welcome, Val and Paul. Just absolutely so excited to have you here. It's
thank you.
Can't wait to hear your story and talk to you about your life and times. And this is a really important conversation that we're about to have because Adam's right. The conversation is starting to change. Obviously, I work in concussion in my clinic in Melbourne, and we're seeing that parents are now getting more concerned about it and wanting to understand if my kid has a hit on the weekend, does that mean that he's going to suffer from CTE, or does that mean it's going to affect them later in life? It's a little bit like the sunburn analogy, I think, where you go out in your 20s and you don't wear sunscreen, and then in your 40s you're getting sunspots. So people are becoming much more aware. But I think what we need to clarify for parents and for people is that concussion is a single blow to the face or head or body that results in a cascade of neurometabolic changes within the brain. It's acute. It usually resolves within 30 days, and you get symptoms along the way that are short term, like maybe some fatigue, some memory loss, some dizziness, some visual changes. But they're acute transient symptoms more than 80% of the time. The conversation that we're now having, and this is one I think we will have, Paul, because I've heard a few of your interviews about heading the ball, is the repetitive head impacts. And so this is the part of the story that we're now starting to talk about. So they're the small routine contacts that never cause a concussion or don't cause symptoms. And so that's that header at training, or the second header, or the third, or the fourth, or the 400th. It's not any single one, it's a cumulative. And same at AFL football training, it's the tackling, it's the bumping, it's those things that kids don't come home and say, Mum, I've got a headache or I've got a concussion. CTE, on the other hand, again, now this is entered into our kind of language since the ABC Collision documentary. We're talking about, yes, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is a progressive brain disorder associated with those repeated impacts. So we're now finding evidence that those repeated impacts are leading to CTE. This is more, though, and Paul, I think we'll get you to speak to this in your experience. It affects memory, thinking, mood, behaviour. And it's currently being confirmed by posthumous brain examination, but we come across the word probable here, that we've got probable CTE, and we're now being able to kind of have a look and assess people with a substantial history of repetitive head impacts and a particular pattern of progressive cognitive or behavioural symptoms to determine that someone fits the criteria consistent with traumatic encephalopathy syndrome, which I think we'll discuss further with you. So quickly, because no one wants to hear Adam and I talk anymore, why this story matters to us is recognition, right? We've got the great Paul Wade here who's about to tell his story if we let him. And, hearing his name talk about CTE and what it means to him in his life will hopefully get other players who may be suffering from these symptoms to recognise and get involved and seek care. Support does exist. So Rowena has been, your neurologist, Rowena has been very clear that we shouldn't be scared of seeking support, that we shouldn't leave it up to families to work it out, that there is help out there that people can get. And then the last part of this story that we want to tell is the prevention. So you've been pretty direct in saying you don't want people to stop playing, but that we know more now, and so we should be able to make the game safer. So that's enough from us. Over to you, Paul. Fantastic to have you here.
Thank you.
For someone that's never watched the great game of soccer in the 80s or 90s, who are you, mate? Like, that's what we want to know.
Well, you know what? I've got a title that says former Socceroo captain, and I'm thinking, let's leave it at that, because if the kids or anybody actually saw how ordinary he was, they'd be losing respect for every other captain who probably deserves that accolade. Honestly, boys, my second touch Because you know how you receive the ball and with your first touch, it's got to be cushioned, it's got to be in the right. My second touch was always a tackle because my first one was that bad. Well, that's how I became all right at tackling.
Good at tackling.
Boing, went over there. Right, I've got to get it back again. So, look, we joke about that, but there's an element of truth there. I'm glad it was on VHS in black and white, so nobody can actually see it. So, look, I just think it was, for me, it was my work ethic that got me there, my enthusiasm. See the way we're talking now? That's the way I played. When I do an interview on the radio and TV, I'm so enthusiastic because that's all I've got, boys. Really. I'm as thick as two short planks, but I have so much energy and I could head a ball, which is obviously why we're talking. So very limited talent, but I hope that people watching this and people in the past have realized, you know what, you don't have to be the best. You just have to be your best.
I love that. That's what I tell my kids every time they go out in the field. Just bring the best version of yourself today. And if you don't, you're walking home, but that's okay. But
Love it.
Like your dad.
But yeah, that's where we leave it. Can you give us a bit of a quick bit of intel, a bit of a background about where you've come from? You've moved over here from the UK when you were 11, I think. Is that correct? And then started playing football. Can you give us a bit of an understanding of that journey? Because it wasn't always, like Adam said, wasn't always A-League and NPL and all these things. There was, a very different landscape in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. I never played for a club while I was in England, came out here when I was 11. I played for the school and we played every now and again, but all my footballing experiences were in the street. And really, in the street, in a pub car park, and in a little section of grass right in front of the starting gate, the pub. And I've Google Earthed it, and it's 10 meters long by 7 meters wide. Now, that was my Wembley Stadium, my MCG, my River Plate. That was it. For 6, 7, 8 of us who were 8 years old, it didn't matter about anything else. Yes, Liverpool won and we love them. We've all got the cards and he's got a scarf and he's got a shirt, but it was all about that however long, hopefully as long as you could until your mum grabbed you by the scruff of the neck and dragged you in. So you don't have to do training sessions. I don't believe. It's more important that you have that fun in an imaginary space where I would commentate. All of us would commentate. Oh, wait, to Val. Oh, what a tackle. And there's 50,000 people watching us. People don't, well, not all of them, but people forget to dream. And all right, I'm dreaming of being an England player at that stage, or playing for Liverpool, but it wasn't the be-all and end-all. It was my imagination, and I allowed it to drag me along.
Incredible.
And when I obviously had to do some research, because again, I played AFL and stayed away from the round ball when I went to school. You did, though, go back over to the UK, didn't you, at around 16 and played at Barnsley, is that right? And then so I'm just hearing that you like to have fun, you like to dream. Obviously, there were some great players there that, again, I had to Google with Jack Charlton was there.
Yeah.
I think, and so, yet they wanted you to stay and yet you still came home. Was that part of the reason, is that you just liked having fun and kind of that kind of stuff?
It was, but then I quickly realized that they were so quick and so strong, and they were the same age as me, but I just felt so inferior that even though I was doing okay at training, I was nowhere near what they could do. And that made me feel very ordinary. And I was just about to go home. I don't know. I said, look, thank you very much for allowing me to train for 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it was. I was training every day and it was amazing. And seeing all these floodlights on a proper ground with proper seating. And so I said, thanks very much. And they said, you're not going home, surely. Well, we've got a game on Thursday night. Why don't you come down and we'll play you? I said, I'm obviously not registered. Don't worry about that. We won't tell them. So I played as a centre back, as a central defender. And the day after, the article in the paper said, Paul Wade, terrific game, really dominated, all these positives, right? And somebody said to me, so can you stay? And I went, no, I've got to go. So it was a combination of all these things that I wanted to be a professional footballer, but at that time I felt so inferior.
Yep.
And you missed your mum.
Don't say that, Val.
No, it's true. It's true.
Hey?
You miss your mum. Miss the 10x7. That's what you missed.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So there, Val's just brought to light what I was feeling at the time. I must have been lonely, and I wasn't willing to do the things that, say, Craig Johnson, who's a former Australian player who did play for Liverpool, the sacrifices, the story that you hear about him is amazing. And at that time, I wasn't willing to go through that.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
And then came back. So that, Paul, what happened then? So how did you re-enter back into the Australian soccer landscape?
Well, I was playing for Croydon, which is where I met Val, and I remember the first training session. If I could go back to Barnsley just for a second, we were playing passes to each other, long balls between two players, but everybody had a ball between two. And I hit this ball, and it, went in the general direction. And the coach came over and said, "What's this boomerang pass that you're playing? You're in England now. You don't play boomerang passes. I want this ball to go from A to B as quickly as possible and so accurate." And that was another moment where I thought, whoa. So when I got back home, I was saying to all the other players, why are you kicking it like a boomerang? You've got to drive this thing. So there was a lesson. It was those experiences for everybody. You grab it, it makes an impact, and you take it. All of a sudden, I felt comfortable playing for Croydon. I wasn't better, but I felt really in control of what I could.
Playing for Croydon then. You're at Preventative. You were younger.
Thank God Mel's here. That's it.
No, I know his history better than he does. You came back and you played for Preventative, didn't you?
Yeah.
Told him out. Yeah, it does kind of where you were is kind of not that important as what you brought back for me, and you kind of you've come back and gone, right, this is the way we need to do these things.
Yeah,
a new experience and started crafting that footy. But well, we may as well hear about that experience, and Val can guide us through the timeline. Probably. Don't worry, mate. I can't remember what I did.
I don't want someone saying that's not right, lady.
Yeah, we all put a bit of mayo on our careers. I mean, I'm probably slapping more on mine than you are, Paul. But So lead us through that how from coming back at 17 and then getting to to wherever we end up.
Yeah. If I was playing for Slavia, and obviously that's the correct story now, Paran Slavia had no supporters. I don't know how the club was formed, but it had a whole heap of Poms who were imported for $2,000 or an airfare, and they would sell them for $20,000 to National League clubs. We were only in the State League. We weren't at the highest level. So that mentality of playing with players who were never going to make it, that's why they came out to Australia. But they brought with them that tenacity, that mongrel, some very, very skillful players. But you grow up very quickly in that environment. Even training sessions, it's like, whoa, this is not under 16s. This is fair income guys who have grown up in Liverpool or whatever and just want to make an impact out here. So that was a real growing up moment. And then I went to Croydon with that experience. And all I did was work hard on this tiny little ground in Croydon. By round 3, it had no grass on it. It was mud. But I loved it. And the teammates were great. I got a lot of feedback, boys, from somebody saying, well done, Wadey. Something as simple as that, which confirms in your mind, I'm doing what I do the best I can. Well done. I didn't tell anyone. I just took it inside and went, yes. To hear well done from a teammate, that's all I really wanted.
Mm. Mm. Paul, moving things like now with a decent understanding of the background, and we'll bring in stories of clubs and definitely get to Maradona's story at that point. But can we now connect the dots and training sessions back in the 90s? What did heading drills look like? What we're trying to now build is a pattern towards, or an understanding of, where things have led to, and obviously you're advocating for safer soccer now, especially for kids, reduce contact, and I think the AFL world, and I think most contact sports, definitely rugby, are starting to reduce contact training limits. We'll get to that in a minute and get some of your thoughts around what can we do to put prevention measures in place. But whilst we're in that era, what did training look like? And what were the balls like? What was the circumstances that may have led to these repetitive head impacts for you?
Yeah, because I knew I could hit a ball. I had no fear. But if I can take you back to my junior days when I first came out here, all we did when we're kids, when we're under 10s, 11s, 12s, the goalkeeper got the ball and he launched it. And we all ran up there. And I can remember specifically being one of the very few who was willing to close his eyes and hit the ball on the head. I had no idea it was going to go, but I won it. And I reckon it was from moments like that. I didn't want to head a ball, but it was important because that was my job. Eyes closed, just put your head down. It hits you on the top of the head. Yeah, job done. And from there, you grow to actually being able to guide the ball. So when I got to Croydon, a training session was normal warm-up, small game, maybe working on playing the ball forward. But then after the little muck around game at the end where we all take the mickey out of each other, you could do whatever you like. And some players were playing long passes, backwards and forwards. I wanted to practice heading a ball like dozens of times. I loved it. And it was a workout for the keeper as well. He had to make saves. It was a workout for the player who was crossing the ball. He has to practice crossing the ball. So to me, it was just a great part, not a chore. I love doing it because if that ball's coming to you quickly, I hated the floated ball, but if it's coming to you quickly and you're running in the opposite direction, once you hit that ball, bang, you made the keeper make a save. What I didn't know is what we're talking about today, but I loved it and I would not change a thing. That's what I could do. And so after training, it was my choice.
Have you ever done the back of the envelope calculation, just roughly, to try and work out how many balls do you think you headed in your career? Is there a way to think of, is there a maths equation that you can do to determine maybe how many times your head has hit that ball?
Somebody said players in England have headed it thousands. All those guys who are dying, and probable CTE becomes CTE. They say thousands of times. I wasn't a professional footballer, so maybe I can't say thousands, but I tell you what. Oh, that was just whispered.
Yeah, I reckon
thousands.
I reckon when you Google Paul Wade and the words "lethal in the air" come up, you probably headed it a fair bit. I'm just possibly.
Yeah, look, I must admit, I put myself in situations where I got elbowed or I hit in the back of somebody else's head, and all those times at training, definitely in a game, but you don't head that ball all the time in a game of football. But the contested header was, all right, you know what? Let's go thousands, but It wasn't millions.
Millions. And did you ever come off with a headache after training and go, geez, I got a bit of a headache today? Do you remember ever going sore neck, sore head?
No,
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 just loved it.
no. And that's where, very quickly, that's where I was not tricked, but didn't bully because it didn't hurt.
Yeah.
Why would I worry? There's no headache. I just kept heading the ball there. I've been doing it for years and I could do it really well. And I'd walk off with the rest of the boys.
No
big
drama.
But
deal.
you did get migraines.
Oh,
So
Later. They can be,
he had right through his teens.
Yeah.
And he was still having them when we started dating. I think they stopped when the epilepsy got worse.
Yeah,
So
right.
he did, as a teenager, had a lot of migraines.
Yeah.
I do remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I never put the two together.
And it might not exist together. If you've had teens in your, migraines in your teens predating your soccer career, it's probably something that is just, might be genetic. We treat migraines a lot in the clinic as well. There's always some kind of trigger to them, but migraines definitely do predate a lot of concussion issues and make them a little bit worse sometimes. So there's that link in there, but I wouldn't say it's, causative or anything like that. Yeah. So it's a bit different, but that's amazing, isn't it? It just goes to show that those repetitive impacts don't necessarily need to produce symptoms for you to actually be getting an impact inside your brain. Physiologically, you walked away and went, yeah, boys, let's hit the showers. But there may have been a chance that physiologically there was, things happening within your brain that you didn't feel. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Crazy. So, going on, because I'm thinking about just muddy pitches and the balls have changed as well. They would have been heavy and soggy. Like I imagine you have been heading some pretty heavy pills as well there at training too.
It was just changing. My dad used to say the ball, it was all stitched. It was real leather. There was where the valve came out to pump the balls up, that was sticking out. There were laces that stitched the bladder into the ball. But that was more his era when it got to me. It's not as what it is today, but it was more like today than it was yesterday.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So
and the balls weigh the same, don't they?
Yeah, the balls weighed the same. A dry one back in the day with the dry one that I was heading the ball with was exactly the same. But as people we're talking to say, yeah, but the ball's traveling quicker now than it ever did before.
Yeah.
You're doing it more often than you ever did it before. So there's correlation there.
Well, that's the advancement in training and the advancement in grounds and equipment and just people wanting to be better. They're doing more, I think, than ever. And probably, that's the way it's heading. Ads?
Yeah, well, I'll do a little bit of a sidestep to the captaincy. You're captain of the Socceroos. In 1993, you're told that you're marking Maradona. What do you do with that, mate? How do you prepare for that? I've heard you say in other interviews, I think the 2 games before that game, you'd been switched out of the team, so you weren't even certain to be playing. Yep. Can you give us a little bit of background around? Because that's a famous part of our footballing history and very clearly yours.
The Maradona bit or the Canada bit or both?
The Maradona, yeah.
Right, yeah. Because you know what? Playing against Maradona was the pinnacle that people, they all know about it. They might have seen the game. But for me and probably Val, it was those two, getting back from those 2 games against Canada to play against Maradona that I hang my hat on. But just to go back to Diego, yes, I was told if he plays in midfield, you mark him. If he plays up front, Mehmed Durakovic will mark him. And then a couple of days before, the practices they'd been doing suggested he was going to play in midfield. So Tomo said, right, you'll be marking him. If he goes to the toilet, you go with him. I went, whoa, I can't. But it was just giving me a clear message. That is your job. And I remember telling the assistant coach, I said, how am I going to stop this? And that's where he gave me a copy of the last 2 games he played. And he said, let's go out and do a training session on your own. So all he did was he got me, he was here, he passed the ball over there. I ran, I got it, I passed it to him. And he'd just kick it over there and I'd run and I'd get it and I'd pass it back to him. He was actually getting the nerves out of my system because I was just, wow, how am I going to stop him? And since then, part of my story has been cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and you know about that. And ABC, activating event, belief, and consequences. And when I talk to people about that, that's what I lived. It was all today. CBT or ABC would be writing it down, get it in on a piece of paper. My bit of getting it on a piece of paper was being given vision of what Maradona can do. So it's working through that and playing against him. I just stood there and went, wow, he's the greatest player ever to play the game. My heart was racing, but it was racing because I had to do this job. So feelings that I was feeling before the game started was just my body getting ready to fight him, metaphorically, not literally. I never did that. And I shook his hand before the game. Just as we're standing in the Sydney Football Stadium tunnel, I went, happy birthday, Diego. I just thought, no, why would I get angry? Why would I stand at the front and go, come on, boys, come on, let's do this? I went, no, happy birthday. Maybe I wasn't I wasn't freaking out anymore. That's why I was so relaxed or less stressed because of that, watching that vision that I could do that.
And
Amazing.
they called you the dancing Aussie afterwards.
Yes.
I think the joke was that you just danced around him and you didn't leave him alone.
Yeah, that all I saw was a number 10, and I'm sure there was a ball around the other side of him, and I never saw it. No, not true, but wow, I thought that's a player who's come back from injury, demanded to come back to injury by the people of Argentina because they hadn't played well in the lead up to these 2 games. He wasn't totally fit. He'd lost a lot of weight very quickly. And so it wasn't the 1986 Maradona. Let's be open and honest with that. But it was still a Maradona that could influence a game like that.
Yeah, wow. And
you talked about the 2 games prior you were even more proud of. Do you want to talk us through that a little bit? Getting back into the team?
Yeah. This is a story I tell people. You could file this under anything: planning, organizing, self-management, resilience. I'd been dropped. The coach came up to me the very first time in Edmonton against Canada, 2 World Cup qualifiers, and said, I've changed the midfield. I'd played 88 times for the Socceroos, 88 appearances, not A internationals. And he's just dropped me. I was so angry, so upset, but I didn't tell anyone, and I was embarrassed because there was articles coming out now saying Paul Wade has become the first Australian soccer captain. I can remember the first paragraph. The first Australian soccer captain in 20 years to be dropped. It was articles like that. The hardest part was going to the next training session that after being told I'm not good enough and trying to be the same captain that I was, the enthusiastic. It's not about me. It's about the team. It's about winning this game. That was the hardest part. And you know what helped? Graham Arnold, who became the Socceroo coach, he said, geez, Wadey, you're taking this well. And when I look back, it was that moment of support that made me think, yeah, you know what? That sucks, but just get on with it. Something simple like that. So anyway, I sat on the bench for the first game, And then I've got to get on there because we got beat 1-0. And then I was sitting on the bench for the second game in Canada, at the Sydney Football Stadium. And with 20 minutes to go in extra time, Tomo said, right, on you go. And Les Scheinflug, the assistant, said, you go out there and kick some asses. Another moment of positivity, of reinforcement that I can do this. Mate, for 20 minutes, I chased everything, tackled, played a couple of good passes. At the end of the game, it's a draw. So it goes to a penalty shootout. There's got to be a result. We're standing on the halfway line, both teams. The goal's up there. And Tomo says, who's taking the first one? And I went, me. You see that pause I've just given? That was how long it was until I went, me. Not because I thought I was better than anybody else. It's just because, hey, you're the captain of this team. Step up. And I'd scored a goal a couple of years earlier. So I was sort of used to it. But you still got to be brave to go, me.
Yeah.
Because there's 40,000 people watching this. And it was something I just did then. But it's something I look back on now and I say to people, if you're going to lead, if you're going to influence, step up. Step up. If you're vulnerable, doesn't matter. Your job is to lead, to set an example. So don't hide in the background. Step up and do it. So fortunately, I scored. I have a process I go through. Fortunately, I scored. Fortunately, we won the World Cup qualifier, and in the next game, I played against Maradona. Can you see how it's gone from the frustration, the anger, you're not good enough to playing against Maradona and that whole story? And that's what I tell people.
What I take from that, Val, is if you ever want Paul to do the dishes, just tell him he's doing a good job.
Yeah.
Wanna go, boys?
You're doing a good job, matey.
You know, he's the best ironer.
There you go.
And many years ago, I told him that he did it so much better than me, and it became his job.
There you go. We're in.
Because, you know, validation.
That's it. Validation.
Step up, Wadey.
Step up, matey. So, do you want to? I'll be pretty keen to transition here because I think the really important part about post soccer or post footy is what you've then done with your post soccer career, working with children, working with I think some refugees and soccer, but also not just soccer. So can you tell us about like what else you've done post your soccer career? Because I think that really is amazing as well.
I've been lucky in that. Yeah, I've been lucky in that area that some players, they get to their career and go, bang, it's over. It's not about them. Nobody watches them anymore. They got to go and get their first job, some of us. For me, the parachute was a lot slower. And thankfully, I've been able to do what I do, getting lower and lower profile, not earning a living out of it anymore, but it's just been gradual. And I think that's been a blessing for me because being a Socceroo captain, you have to do lots of interviews. So I was quite happy talking to people and being interviewed on the TV. And then I got a job hosting a program, C7 Sport, Channel 7 took the rights to the Socceroos and the NSL. So people were still watching me. People still wanted to hear what I thought. And then as time goes on, not many people want to hear what you think, and that you start to slide a bit. And so I've been very lucky in that. Oh, and that's when I lost my job, though, I decided to stop being a draftsman because I was a mechanical draftsman. I worked for Football Victoria coaching kids. So there's another moment. Kids for an hour thought I was terrific. And again, it's a moment where I can slowly come off that high of being a Socceroo captain. So it was moments like that developing into me and Val put a program together, Paul Wade Life Skills. We call the little program Goals. gaining opportunities and life skills,
Love it.
goals. And we took that program into schools. And again, now we've got 100 year 10s listening to me. So can you see what I mean? It's rather than gone, bang, you mean nothing anymore. To a lot of people, that's what they think. To, yeah, all right. People are still listening. I could still make things interesting.
And people can, and just to call that out, mate, your website is incredible. And that whole Paul Wade Life Skills, people can find it at paulwade.com.au. Val, obviously you've played a big role in managing that. Are you still able to be active in that, Paul? Obviously, speaking engagements and programs at schools. And I imagine that you'd still get, clubs and leagues that want to get you out there, the Socceroo captain hero to do speaking engagements. You still doing much of that? Or is that sort of slowly parachuted down as well?
Yeah, I don't do anything. I never have. And not because I haven't wanted to. It's just that
What do you mean you never have?
Never actually influenced the website. And
no, you mean he means the speaking.
Doing the speaking engagements themselves, mate. Yeah.
Oh, see?
So yes, he is.
Yeah. And still doing those, mate. Like obviously we've seen you all over the media recently, talking about this. Are you still doing speaking engagements? Is life skills incorporating that, or is that a completely separate thing? I know that life skills is the program for kids in school, but within that it seems to capture the speaking engagements and how you can communicate to the community.
Yeah, exactly. And they come from all angles, whether that be in schools, mainly people transitioning from year 6 to year 7 or years 9 to 12 who are going through different stages, important stages in their lives. And I get my stories and I try and marry them with who I'm talking to and the issues that they're facing. But Val does all the selling. Would you call it selling? Taking it to making people aware.
The connecting.
Yeah, making people aware that this is what I do and it fits. Sport reflects life. So I'm very lucky with my sport and my health to be able to marry it all up. I've got the Seizure on a bit of vision. It's very visual. All the shirts that I've swapped from all over the world, I hold them up and tell that story. So I hold Maradona's shirt up and I hold that Canada shirt up that I got dropped, and I show the England shirt, and they've all got stories and I've tailored them to suit that. I've got the vision of me having a seizure on Channel 7, photographs of my brain when I had it removed because of epilepsy. So it's I don't just stand there and tell a load of stories. I've got lots of vision to back it up. But Val does all the selling.
The life skills part of it is for everybody. It's not just for children or schools. So it can be, Paul can adapt what he does to corporates or sporting clubs or schools, and he is still able to do that. But what we found is that we decided to stop searching for work and cut down because the preparation time for him is taking so long now. So we're not chasing business as much anymore. But ironically, as soon as I stopped chasing, people started asking. So there has been quite a bit of work this year. And Paul is very capable, as you can see, of doing what he does. And I think that it's like muscle memory. So the stories that he tells and what he's been telling you, he's told them so many times that it is like muscle memory. But the planning for it, so every school will ask for something different to focus on. And he has to plan for that. And it can take him a whole day to plan for one school. So we've worked out that we just need to be careful about how close things are booked together. Try not to do more than one thing in one day, and give him time to prepare before he has to do it.
Yeah, and I guess, look, probably now's the time for us to go a little bit deeper on that, Val. And obviously, leaning into what are the changes, what are the impacts. So obviously that's a really obvious one that a lot more time needs to go in, thought processes. Cliff, did you want to? I imagine you've got a probably better articulated questions for Paul around now some of the impact and the influence that's having on day-to-day life, I guess.
Yeah. Look, I think I'm mindful of actually just mentioning your epilepsy as a teenager and as a child. You documented that you suffered that when you were young, and then you had some. You just said before as well, like you had the on-air kind of attack, and I think that was quite unexpected for you as well at the time. I think if I've read that correctly in the press, and then that's led to a surgery that has. There was a chance that you weren't going to come out, or you might have come out a bit differently. And so I think the first thing that I want to know is how do you make that kind of decision as well, going in to say I'm going to go in and have surgery, and there's a reasonable chance that I may not be the same person when I come out.
Yep, you've got to talk to your wife, and you've got to talk to the kids, and you've got to talk to the neurologist, and you've got to talk to the surgeon. Not that we know anything about what you know about, and you've got to obviously trust a little bit. But yeah, that was a big decision. But I'd been having so many seizures. At one point, I was having 5 a day, and I was having tonic-clonic seizures, and I couldn't drive, and it was just awful. I had no independence. If I was running a football clinic, Val had to drive me there and wait for 3 hours while I finished this football clinic at a school. So it wasted 3 hours of her time. And when I had a seizure, what did she have to do to help me get through it? I had one, and I think I had one in a pub, and you had to put a towel over me because when you have a tonic-clonic seizure, you lose all control of your body, and I wet myself. So it was like a bit of that as well. So in the end, it was an easy decision to say, yeah, I'm willing to take this chance.
Yeah, the quality of life had declined significantly, and the seizures were uncontrollable. No medication was working anymore. So it was a fairly easy decision in the end, wasn't it?
Mm.
Thank you for sharing that. And the only reason that I kind of touch on that is to say that to differentiate the symptoms that you're now having from what you've had in the past, like in terms of there may be some people that are going, oh, well, it's epilepsy, it's not probable CTE. And I think we really need to be clear about the differentiation that you had the surgery, you came out of the surgery, and your symptoms were gone. Gone. So you've been symptom free since, I think, was the surgery 2002? Is that right, or something around then? That you've been symptom free since then.
Yeah.
And then I guess the next question we lead into that Adam alluded to is then what did you, Val, you can answer this as well, or Paul, maybe both perspectives would be fantastic, of what you started to see that then made you go and have a chat with Rowena and say, hey, something's not right here.
Yeah, this is right. Are we actually going to be out of shot when she?
Yeah.
This I had no idea. Over to you, Val.
Yeah. There's some shirts that need ironing, Paul. That's
Yes, please.
You two are very good. You are very good.
This has been going on for quite a few years, where we've been trying, me and the kids and friends have been trying to get him to go and see a neurologist. After the epilepsy surgery, Paul stopped. He didn't want to go and see a neurologist anymore. And I think he was always fearful of what they were going to tell him, that maybe maybe I am having seizures and don't know it. And they're going to tell me I can't drive again. And there was a real fear element there for him. So when changes started to happen in his memory and his behaviors and, lots of little things, you kept saying, you need to go. We've got to go and see a neurologist. No, no, no. So this went on for years and finally got to a point where he agreed that his memory was declining to a point that he could notice it. and he could notice that his concentration was nowhere near what it used to be. And they were the two things for Paul that he noticed. There was lots of other things that I noticed and friends noticed. And eventually we managed to get him to go and see Rowena. And we chose Rowena because of seeing her on TV about CTE and looking after AFL footballers at that point. And one of my friends called me and said, Val, turn the TV on. You have to listen to this woman and you have to take Paul to see her. So that was how we ended up getting him to go and see someone and see Rowena.
And then what does the process look like, with Rowena then? Like, for me, I'd love to understand, the testing. Is there testing they can do, or is it mainly going, based off your history and your symptoms? What did they how did they come to that conclusion, and what involvement did you have in understanding in that?
Rena. What's her name?
Rowena.
Rowena is the coolest neurologist you will ever meet. Like I'm up and I'm buzzing it. She is so calm.
Yeah.
So she just gave you this reassurance that what we're going to do is what we do with a lot of people. So I felt relaxed right from the start. And she said, what we're going to do is going to get, and correct me if I'm wrong, a neuropsychologist who sits you down and talks to you for a couple of hours, asking you questions. And I'm assuming in those 2 hours, you give the answers that suggest there are certain things happening. That's how I see it. You would know.
That sounds
Yeah.
good. It's an emerging field, so
Yeah.
like I said, it's amazing to hear how they go about it.
But there's also all the other tests. So there's all of the scans, the MRI and the CT and the I think we had 3 different scans in the beginning, and then the neuropsychology, and they're the main things that they can see what is actually going on. Paul was actually hard to diagnose, so at the end of 24, she said, "There's a lot going on there, but you're hard to definitively diagnose because there's the area where the epilepsy resection was done, and then there's other areas in the brain that are showing lots of different things. And clinically, he was showing lots of different things. So we decided to just wait and see what happened. And it was only 6 months after that that I called her and said, things are changing quite rapidly and I'm really worried. And so she booked us in for another MRI and another neuropsychology. But what she also asked us to do was a amyloid PET scan, which can 99%, I believe, tell you if it's Alzheimer's.
Yeah. Okay.
So it finds the proteins that will tell you if it is or not. And there was also a blood test which can do that as well. So he had those so that we could say that he did or didn't have Alzheimer's, and that came back negative to Alzheimer's. So that then discounted another thing. So she did all these things to discount other things, other types of dementia. And then the neuropsychology showed quite clearly that it was leading towards probable CTE. And so with everything else, they put it together and they're then able to actually make a diagnosis.
Boys, in my defense, when Rowena came back the first time, after the first test, she said, "You are very intelligent."
I love it. Yes.
See, I told you. But she was obviously saying on the scale where people are really struggling, I was at the top end. That's what I read into that. But the second time she came back and said, whoa, yeah, we've got the decline is major.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Can
within
you
12 months, there was a significant decline with both the neuropsychology and the scans.
For a layperson, and obviously Cliff's the concussion guru on this call, can you talk, because Paul, to speak with you,
each other here, aren't we today? This is fantastic. I love it. Yeah. Very flattering. Yeah.
Paul, to sit and talk with you for an hour or so, it's hard to fathom that you're that Val's seeing a significant deterioration, because you're incredible to talk to. Your recollection is amazing. We all forget a word here or there. For both of you, can you sort of explain to us what are the actual real symptoms that you're experiencing that are likely indicators of probable CTE? Because it's hard to pick up on a call like this, mate, because you're so sharp and witty and still very clearly with it, mate.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I live with, because when I tell people, they go, "Oh, don't worry about it. That happens to me. Oh, I'm forgetting things all the time." So I'm constantly thinking, yeah, it's old age. But yeah, it's old age. Everybody forgets that. How was I supposed to understand that? But then something happens and you go, no, this is different, because I forget again and again and again and again. And I can feel at times. There was a day I came home, having driven home. There was somebody who was tailgating an L-plater. I was stopped at the shops. There was somebody who unloaded their car or the trolley into the car and then just shoved the trolley behind a column at the top of a hill. And I was inside. I was just so. I got home and I said, you know what, Val? I hate people. No, I really hate people. So how can I, is that normal? Can some people upset you that much that you take it home? And again, I'm guessing, is that a mood swing? I'm constantly questioning everything. But then I think of what Rowena and Val's seeing. Rowena's tested. You guys have been doing it for years. I've got to say, yeah, I can't see it yet, but it's happening.
And Val, I guess that explains from your perspective. They're the things is that an example of the things you see where I imagine that the escalation of mood swings, you've probably not seen it like that over what might have been very minor observations out in the community. Is that a really good example of the changes you're seeing?
Yes, so Paul has always been very mild-mannered, very pleasant, never gets angry. He's just not got that personality. So when we started to see those sort of behaviours, and he actually shouted at me one day in the garage, and that is unheard of. You know, like
And I can't remember, boys.
He can't remember doing that.
That's convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that one. Yeah.
That I was stunned because Paul has never raised his voice to me or our girls ever. Like, he's just such a nice guy. So that was a real, like, what is going on? He gets upset, on the road. He gets upset about things that really don't matter. And sometimes he'll debate with me. He'll tell me something isn't right, and he'll go on and on and on about it. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'll just humour you. But but it's just not his personality. So there are those personality changes that have become quite apparent. We also have had a few things with friends where his behaviour's not been very acceptable, and they've actually spoke up and said, Wadey, you need to go and see someone. But the other thing that you don't see is we come on these things, or he goes to a school and speaks in front of 100 people. He gets on the radio to talk about the game or in front of a camera, and he's like this, and he's just comes out with all the same stuff, and a lot of it is repetitive. But when we're done, he'll be stuffed. He'll be exhausted because he's overloaded his brain and overstimulated, and he's quite likely to, be a little bit zombie-ish. That that happens, he gets very, very tired. So he'll crash. When it's been big days, he will crash big time. And the memory, when you get that you're asked the same question about where we're going 6 times within 20 minutes, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That which has happened. And there's a lot of things that I see that other people don't see because my mum had dementia. So I've already lived it, and I see things that I just go, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly the same."
Is there clear distinctions though, and because you mentioned that they tested for dementia, and there's obviously some clear distinctions around being forgetful, which is one thing,
Yeah.
versus behavioural changes, fatigue. Obviously you're coming on here and hopefully, you get a chance afterwards to have a rest and take it easy today, because you're clearly fixating and working hard, and when you fixate on something and you can recall it from your brain, you can do it well, and you can do it for a period of time. And clearly, you can do that with your speaking gigs and with all those kind of things, because you're accessing that part of your brain that's still kind of working for you, and bang, off you go. It's there.
Yeah.
Clearly, with dementia, it's more, dementia just becomes, well, I don't want to use the word forgetful because that's disrespectful, but, you start to forget things and whatever. There's clearly more things you're noticing with, or have you noticed, I should ask this as a question, Val. It's not just forgetfulness. It's like you say, it's mood changes. It's things that are changing beyond just not being able to recall.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many little things all the time. They're the big things that most people will notice though. There's the memory, there's the exhaustion, and lack of concentration, and then those mood swings.
Yeah, and that's clearly what the neuropsychologist has worked through with you as well, to kind of differentiate between those things. I think it's important as we start to learn and talk about CTE that we're actually, a lot of people just want to disregard it. They want to go, oh, it's dementia. It's not CTE. I was like, hang on a second. No, there are differences. Valerie's seen the differences in that. You've had lived experience with dementia and you're seeing a difference in what Paul is presenting. And so that's the important point to make for a lot of people, is that, and some people have a vested interest in disregarding it. They don't want it to be true. They don't want it to be and they don't want to change things. And I think that's, if everyone's happy to segue to our next, I think, part, which is, how do we change sport in a way that doesn't ruin it? Is it, people say, I've got a little handle on Instagram and people call me all kinds of names and think I'm trying to destroy the game because, we know more. We've said that at the start. I think, Paul, you've said that. We know more now. Do we not owe it to the future generation to be able to allow them to play sport and live their life till a ripe old age without any problems? So I guess that's the next question I have for you is, what do you want to see change? What can change? How do we avoid this from becoming an epidemic of our time?
I have always said never ban heading from the ball, but I've been saying that because I love to do it. Nobody ever said you've been belted in the head, there's blood everywhere, I want to go off, I want it stitched and I want to go back on. I don't care what. So heading has been a major part of my my makeup in a football team. So when they say ban it, I'm thinking, no, you're not going to ban it. You're soft if you ban it. These kids have got that mentality of never let them know you're hurt. So that was me. And now, because it's been eliminated that it's not part of the brain that's caused all this problem, that was nothing to do with it. It's that repetitive concussions. Let me give you an example. And I can't believe it just happened right in front of me. Me and Val were in Bundaberg and we were running a football clinic. But before we started with these kids who thought they were a little bit better, there was a little local football team. And I'm standing in the corner of the ground. There's a goal up there, or on the side, goal there and the touch line there. So you can imagine. And it's only 10 metres away. They're under 10s. So he kicked it. He took a corner and all the kids were waiting in front of the goal. He kicked it and he couldn't get it past the first defender. And I thought, try again. The second time, he got it over the first defender into the perfect spot where any one of those 6 or 7 under 10s could have headed that ball in, and every one of them went.
Yeah.
And I thought, that is exactly what we're talking. It is not natural to head a ball. Why would you go and have a ball hit you on the nose at under 10s? Because you haven't practiced, right? And the other thing was, what was that coach doing, putting him in that situation? I thought, this is perfect. It's more about the coach who's put on a practice that has put those kids in a position where they have the chance to be repetitive with everything they do. And that's where, as you quite rightly say, CTE comes from. So, yeah, wow. I could not believe that happened right in front of me. So that's what I want to see based on that. Coaches have got to be educated, not to instill fear in our kids, because we don't want to stop them in contact. We don't want to wrap them in cotton wool. Otherwise, their lives, they're going to quit and they're going to do drugs and there'll be a mental health problem and obesity will take over or whatever. So just coaches, please tailor your training sessions so it's not repetitive like it was for me.
But we would like to see heading banned until they're
That's a good point.
under.
Yeah. And I think Rowena's come out and said that as well. She's quite strong in advocating for heading
Yes.
post
Yeah,
12.
and then past 12 have limited training, heading training. So when they're not doing what Paul did, the over and over and over, just the basics and, learn how to use your feet.
Paul, how would you communicate that to a parent with white line fever that says, oh, the game's getting soft, and how would I, as a junior, progress to the EPL if I, like practice makes perfect is what we're always told, right? So if I'm not getting that instinctive training in at a young age, how could I possibly compete with others that probably are? And I'm sure what we're talking about is trying to advocate at a FIFA level, right? Internationally, we should try to encourage that. Obviously, there are challenges in regulating that and enforcing that. But even if we're talking about just Australia and you've got, old school parents, how would you communicate to them that your kid can still make it, that practicing heading from the age of 13 and up in a controlled manner can still provide you with the skills you need to maybe make it to the EPL one day? Is that an argument you can make? And how would you approach that if you had a parent on the side?
Yeah, I would definitely, rather than say, this is how we got to change it, you can still make it, I would go down to their level, in their world. I would say, listen, this is what's happened to me. I totally agree. If they're all doubters, I totally understand why you are thinking what you're thinking now. So I would bring my story to grassroots and I'll say, I was like you. I did this. I used to head the ball all the time. Coaches didn't educate me. So I would bring my issue down to their level where they're at, even though it's not happened. And then I'd say, so what, in my opinion, I'd be totally honest and say, we just need to change it little by little. Or else, if they continue to do it, we don't know what damage they'll be doing to their brain until it's damaged, because that's what happens with CTE. So I think the main thing is, don't preach to them. Talk to them about what you used to do and what is happening now and how they can almost help me and help their kids. You can be a pioneer of changing training sessions.
Is anything changing in Europe and in the UK? Like, are they making, and Val, maybe you might be more aware of the actual changes in training regime, but is it happening there? Is there junior training restrictions? Because the point I'm trying to get to is 100% with you, Paul. Yep, you can get down to their level and try and personalize your experience, to have them sympathize and maybe make change. But I think a lot of people would be happy to make the change. There's always 2 or 3 sides to this debate, I'm sure. And how do we overcome? Because we see it in the footy field. Cliff and I are heavily involved in footy and lacrosse and basketball and other sports. And it's the same across sport. You've got your parents that are happy to make the change because they see, safety first. You've got others who are very resistant to it. And so trying to overcome that is a big issue, and trying to present the opportunity for a pathway to elite sport is perhaps the pushback that I just hear very anecdotally about football or about soccer and heading. Well, they've got to do it. Otherwise they won't be good enough to do it to make it one day in the Premier League or in the professional sports.
So the UK does have rules in place now. And it depends what you read. I believe it's under 12, but sometimes when you look it up, it says under 11, that they're not allowed to head the ball. And then there is limited heading in training through their teams. There's been changes in the US, and there are other European countries, and I couldn't tell you offhand exactly who. But there are other countries that have put this in place, and there's actually some clubs. There was a club recently in Italy, like a high-profile club that has put those rules in place for their juniors. So there is change happening around the world.
Yep. Okay.
So it sounds like we're doing less of it, and we're also then doing it differently, which I think is really positive. Like, I think there's so many ways, and we've had Al Pearce on here, who's a neuroscientist, a researcher, and he strongly advocates that, you at a young age, you don't need to be doing the skill acquisition specifically to then able to be a great footballer or a great soccer player. That, just getting out there, running around, finding your space, using your feet. I think you mentioned footwork before, Valerie. I think, footwork is just so important. Like, we had a discussion on here with Robbie Vi, who's a rugby coach, and he said footwork is what leads to these head impacts in rugby. And I think if you do get your footwork probably in the right spot with soccer, you may be able to head the ball more appropriately as well and have less impact. I'm not sure, but would be definitely worth investigating. But it sounds like we're just doing it differently and a little bit less. We're not completely removing it from the game. And
no, I don't think the people who are wanting to make change, they don't want it eliminated from the game. If you look at the highest level now, it's flatlined. What they used to do in the 50s, 60s, 70s, it's continued. The number of headers in that time frame, 90 minutes, hasn't changed. But what's happening now is free kicks, for example. Everyone works on free kicks because you can be playing poorly but win a game on a free kick. So they're practicing long throws, which creates a moment of competition, which creates another moment you could either get whacked, whatever. So it was interesting to read that the number of headers hasn't really come down. It hasn't gone up. So people are saying, well, you know what?
Sounds like we're trying to avoid that contested ball. Like most sports, it's become a possession game where you actually want to maintain possession. And so a short throw to a player who's going to, take that first touch and not do a Paul Wade and then lose the ball and have to tackle. Is more what we're looking for in most sports. Football's become a high possession game. If you've got the ball, then you're in control. And so maybe that's why heading hasn't really gone up that much. There's less of those contested moments in soccer now because we're trying to hold the ball.
Tell you what, though, if we've got 5 minutes to go, we're 1-0 down. You know what I'm going to do? Get that ball and whack it in the area, where it just might drop after a header and we might score a goal. So, the lower you go down in football, the less talent they've got, the more they've got to kick it, the more there's a competition or a moment of a clash. So, it's not about the Premier League. Well, it is. That's part of it. But boom, boom, boom. What about the steps getting there?
Yep. 100%. So I think we just got to. So I think you'd land on we need to coach it differently. Then at the end of that is that we need to coach it differently. We need to be smarter about how we coach it, make sure the technique's sound, make sure that then, there's less opportunity for impact with someone else's head or elbow, something like that. So it sounds like, it's on the coaches to make that change. And maybe that needs to come from Football Victoria down, where they're, providing templates or kind of examples to coaches to be able to do that. I think might be where we land there.
Yeah.
We've been going for a while. I think the main thing that I guess I would like to know is, as a former player, captain, OAM, speaker, champion, great at ironing champion as well. If there's a former player out there that recognises themselves in something that they've heard today and your story, what do you want them to do tomorrow morning?
This is how, even though I've come out and said I have epilepsy and I use that now as a thing to inspire people that they can still do things despite what's happening. When Rowena told me that I had CTE and that it can't be fixed, it's terminal, can you imagine how I felt when I heard that? It was, how I told you she's so cool. Well, she very calmly mentioned it. And I just went, whoa. And from that moment, I actually said to her, and she agrees, she remembers as well, I said, I can't be an ambassador. I can't come out and say this sort of stuff because I'll never get a job. Nobody's ever going to book me if they know that I've got CTE and my memory's going. And then on the way home, I thought, how selfish is that? I've come out with my epilepsy, and yet all of a sudden I fear the repercussions of saying CTE. So it's real for me. As soon as you come out and say, yeah, guys, I've got CTE, the weight will be lifted off your shoulders. So I'd say, don't be afraid of people knowing, because people care. They care. And you might not know who they are, but Val reads social media and told me, I don't know whether it's still true, but people have been liking or commenting in a positive way on what's happened to me. And then there's a troll, but then the attack on the troll is just so immense that it lifts you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and so to you guys, girls who are feeling different, are being told you're different, just go to a GP, and that GP will probably refer you to a neurologist, and the neurologist will do the tests and give you feedback. At least you'll know. Don't hide it. People care.
Yeah, don't be scared to go and ask for help if something doesn't feel right. And that's a big message. And knowing that with younger people, the risks of just depression and, possibly suicide seem to be more prevalent than Paul's age group, really. I'd be saying, if things don't feel right, you go see the doctor. It doesn't mean that you just have depression. There could be something else going on if you've had those repeated head knocks. So it's worth going and asking the question.
And obviously, we talked off air about, and something that I think is just really amazing, and when I saw it on LinkedIn, is connectors or connect CTEs. I don't know how you say that, but it's
Connectors, yeah.
Connectors, obviously awareness and resources and support for CTE and concussion. So we now have a designated board and a business or an enterprise that is there to support CTE or probable CTE sufferers. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement with that and what they're doing, the work they're doing at the moment?
Val started off this relationship. I can fill you in what I see. Val started it off. Val's been talking to Seth, the PFA, and Rowena, and brought it all together. The people who are involved in bringing it together have been amazing. But from where I sit, there are high-profile people who have put themselves in a position where we're damaging our brain, and to see us all get together and not be the superheroes that everyone thinks we are, that ended when the final whistle went. We're just normal people now with a high profile that just have that chance to get it out there. I feel honoured to be there with Wally Lewis and Ian Roberts and you'll remind me who the others are.
Michael Lippman. There's a long list of really recognised people. No, you're right, mate.
Yeah, so that's such a powerful thing, and I'm honoured to be a part of that. But Val is the one that's with Sarah and Rowena that have just ignited this thing.
Well, not the connectors part, that was already ignited.
I'm going to leave again. See you guys. The iron's on.
People need the faces. People need the faces to know. You know, Paul Wade. You know, the names you mentioned there. You know, like it's Ian Roberts. I mean, he's been very upfront on a lot of podcasts, and he's been in the Australian newspaper. I mean, Wally Lewis, you're un-Australian if you don't know who Wally Lewis is, you know. So for these people who are, so, like you said, I disagree. I think you guys are superheroes for the work that you do beyond the final whistle and beyond that time. I mean, you know, we'd call you a bloody legend just for the, you know, Paul Wade life skills, but, you know, you've leveled up there and now you're doing this as well. To hear that you're still doing the life skills despite challenges and despite the fact that you probably need to go to bed for 24 hours after delivering one, mate. I mean, that's a level of superhero-ness that I think is amazing. So,
thank you.
Yeah, no, to be continuing the work that you do, to be passionate about it, even though it's now having an impact on you before and after, that just goes in line with your entire career of just hard work and grunt and it's inspiring for me. So I really think it's important that you're right, Val. There's a lot of young people now in their 20s. There was an Adelaide female footballer that came out. I'm really sorry, her name escapes me. You know, at 25 or 23 or 28 to be coming out and again having potential and probable CTE. To have that resource available to you now is just fantastic and amazing. So
it is, and anyone can call. Like now, this is, I don't know if you know the background, but Wally and Linda Lewis joined forces with Rowena Mobs and Sarah Willie and other people, and they stormed Parliament to get funding through Dementia Australia to get connectors up and running. So it's an amazing story in itself, and what they've done is incredible. And now there's a number that people can call when they need to ask questions. So if you're too scared to go to the doctors, if you think, oh, am I really having these problems? You can call connectors and they'll speak to you and talk you through it and guide you in the right direction and also guide you to support services. So it's just, you know, it's fantastic.
Brilliant. Well, with that, guys, we could talk all day. I'd love to get into more stories, but let's wrap it there so that it's so that everybody can get their head around this. We'll make sure that we put appropriate links in the show notes down below to Connectors Australia, Dementia Australia, to Paul Wade Life Skills, Rowena. Any reference that we can make, we'll put into the show notes. This has been an incredible conversation. Paul, thank you so much for being as honest and open as you have. Val, for being who you are. You know, the challenges that you see off camera, that you experience off camera. Keep up the fight, Paul, for both of you. Yeah. I mean, this is something that, you know, we're so lucky to have had this conversation. I'm sure that behind the scenes, when the camera's off, that's when, you know, the challenges are there. And don't be too frustrated with yourself, mate. This isn't something that you can choose to impact yourself. It is what it is, right? And you know, with the support mechanisms,
to you too, doing the research that you do to make this happen, that's the moment when I'm really miserable and I think about all the things that are going to happen to me or could happen to me. These moments lift me up and say, people care.
Absolutely, mate. We really do. We really do. So from me, Cliff, I'll let you close out, mate, but thank you so much. It's been an honour. I look forward to staying in touch and let's do this again at some point if you're up for it, as more information comes to light.
Yeah, if I've got no ironing to do.
He's actually been a bit slack on that, I have to
say. No, all I've got to say is to round out, thank you and well done, Wadey. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Good on you, boys.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
All the
See
best.
ya. Bye.